As usual, we start with the vocabulary. The first word in our vocabulary list is tradition. Tradition is very important to cultures because tradition means the customs or beliefs which are handed down from people before you. So traditions, of course, come from a very long history. And traditions are passed down from mother to daughter, father to son, and then from grandfather to grandchildren, grandmother to grandchildren. And these traditions are passed down in stories, in the way people act, in what they say, and basically how they live. So traditions, kind of think about traditions as being, I don't want to say old-fashioned, but of course they are very rooted in history and the way that previous generations did things. They will hand their traditions down to their children and so on. So those are traditions. Okay, next word, ancestor. I just mentioned this word, ancestor. Ancestor is a person in your family who lived a long time ago. Yeah, usually we talk about ancestors as people who lived, your great-grandfather, your great-great-grandfather, but your grandfather and your grandmother and also just your parents are also your ancestors, and they're still with us. Whew, good. So a person in your family who lived a long time ago, yeah, but also people who are living now are also your ancestors, right? But usually when we talk about ancestors, we're talking about the generations that came before you. So you can think about, where did my ancestors live? How did my ancestors live? Usually when we ask these questions, we're talking about, hundreds of years ago. How did people live? Or where did they come from? Especially if you're from a country that has many immigrants, many people who moved to that country, like America, where many people came from other countries. So you can say, where did my ancestors come from? Okay? Next, we have legend. A legend is a story that is handed down as part of tradition. Traditions, really, when you think about it, they are stories. Most of traditions are just stories, or they're built on stories. And stories that are repeated again and again, and they become part of a culture. And usually they have some basis in fact or real history, but of course they are very legends are kind of like the story grows and it becomes more and more fantastic or more and more impressive over time as each retelling comes about. So legends are stories that are very old, that come down from many generations ago. And of course, when you think about legends, you can think about in the West the Greek legends about the Greek heroes like Hercules and Perseus, right? These are very amazing stories. And sometimes, of course, they're a little fantastical, but they're part of a culture. And there are stories also that give reasons for why people do certain things. So they could be legends. Also, another word that's very similar to legend is myth. So myths and legends are very important to a culture. Okay. Next, we have diversity or diversity. Diversity is the quality of being different. So if you have a group of people, like this group of young people right here, you can see that they're not all the same, right? They're different, right? There's boys, there's girls, there's different races. There could even be different, I'm not sure because they're lying down, but they could be different heights, right? So diversity just means the quality of being different. People in a group who are not all the same or who all look the same or who all have the same beliefs or ideas or ways of living, but they have diverse, if there are different people in the group who look different, who think differently, who live differently, then that is a diverse group instead of a uniform. Uniform would be the opposite of diversity. Uniform. So you can have a uniform society or you can have a diverse society. Okay, but diversity just means the quality of being different. Next we have connect. Connect means to join or link together. There's a famous idea about this, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, that Kevin Bacon is a famous actor, and there's an idea that everybody knows somebody. You know somebody who is only who knows maybe less than 6 people who personally knows Kevin Bacon, a famous actor. So that's kind of like this picture here, who do you know? How close are you? How are you connected to other people? Your friends, who are their friends? Who are their relatives? How are all those connections made? So to connect is to join or link together. How are you connected to the people in your neighborhood, in your city, in your country, in the world, right? What are those connections? Okay, the next word is take part in. This is a 3-part verb, right? To take part in. Also, we call it a phrasal verb, but it also means just to participate. Participate. Participate is a himdoro or difficult word, right? Participate, right? Participate. 4 syllables. Take part in is easier to say, but it's 3 words, right? Take part in. So to take part in means to join a group that is doing something together. So if you see a soccer game and you want to join the soccer game, you take part in the soccer game, or you participate in the soccer game. If you see a group of people eating lunch together, you say, oh, I want to eat lunch with them. So when you join them, you take part in that group eating lunch. You participate in their lunch, okay? But take part in means to join a group that is doing something together. Next, we have chopsticks. Chopsticks are eating utensils. Utensils in the West are a knife, fork, and spoon. In many Asian countries, they are chopsticks, and they are just a pair of sticks, small sticks, only about that long, which people use to eat food. Of course, if you're watching me from an Asian country, you're very familiar with chopsticks. If you're not, then of course, chopsticks are very commonly used in many Asian countries to eat food, especially Chinese food. And a lot of Americans do know what chopsticks are, and they do use them because Chinese food is very popular in America. And there's many Chinese restaurants, and of course, you can ask for chopsticks to eat your food at the Chinese restaurant. Okay, our last word is meal. Meal, of course, is a dish of food that you eat during the day. Usually we have 3 meals a day. Unless, of course, you're a hobbit, okay? It's from the Lord of the Rings. They have breakfast and second breakfast and so on throughout the day. But you should only eat 3 meals a day. Some people only eat 2 meals a day because they want to lose weight. But traditionally, the 3 meals a day are breakfast in the morning, lunch in the middle of the day, and dinner in the evening. And it looks like this young gentleman is eating spaghetti, probably dinner. Okay, that's a lot of spaghetti. Okay, so anyway, that's a meal. And those are our words for the lesson.
American Textbook Reading. Social Studies, Book 4. Lesson 1. Different cultures. Tradition. Customs or beliefs which are handed down from people before you. Ancestor. A person in your family who lived a long time ago. Legend. A story handed down as a part of tradition. Diversity. The quality of being different. Connect. To join or link together. Take part in. To join a group doing something together. Chopsticks. A pair of sticks which people use to eat food. Meal. Breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
We always begin with vocabulary, and our first word is festival. Sorry, festival. Festival. Okay? Festival. A festival is a day or time of celebration. A day means a whole day or a certain time that people celebrate. We have this word here, celebration. Of course, that's also in the unit title. So celebrate. Celebrate, of course, as a verb. Celebrate. Celebrate means, and this pen, celebrate. Okay, sorry about that. To celebrate. To celebrate means to rejoice, to have fun, to recognize something great, like an event, or you can celebrate people as well. So to celebrate is to kind of have a party because you want to honor something. You want to recognize something or someone. For example, every year you celebrate your birthday, right? And that is a type of celebration. But a festival is when people get together and they all celebrate like a holiday or some event, and that's a festival. Next, we have the word religious. Religious, O-U-S, means full of. So for example, famous, full of fame. Religious, full of religion. Okay, so relating to religion. Somebody who is religious, of course, they have a religion. They believe in a god or gods, right? So they have religion. They are religious. Okay. Patriot. A patriot is a person who loves, they live in their country, but they love their country. So if you really love your country and you think your country is a great country, maybe, you can go too much, obviously. My country is the greatest in the world. Well, okay, be careful with that though. But of course you love your country, you love your family, you love where you grew up. You were born there. That's what you know, right? So you're a patriot. You support your country and you support the community and the nation in which you live. You are a patriot. Okay. Parade. We talked about festival before. We talked about celebrations, right? A festival is where people will celebrate a certain event or people, and usually during a festival, there might be many parades. A parade is a line of people. Could be cars, could be big vehicles that aren't really cars, but they're kind of like cars, but they have a big platform and statues or people on them, and it's very fantastical, very colorful, very interesting float. We call those floats. And a musical band that moves through a public place. So parades usually go through city streets. You don't really see a parade out in the middle of the country. I mean, what's going on? The cows will be happy, but usually you have a parade through a populated area so that many people can appreciate and join in the excitement and the joy of celebrating some event. And the people in the parade have organized, they've practiced, they put a lot of effort into either playing musical instruments or in wearing special costumes or making great designs or interesting, colorful floats to celebrate a certain event. So parades. A very famous parade is a Thanksgiving parade, the Macy's parade during Thanksgiving in New York City, where Macy's department store, the tradition, they have a parade for Thanksgiving Day, and they have a lot of different big balloons, huge balloons of different characters from culture. But there's many different kinds of parades. Next, we have a feast. A feast is a large meal for a celebration. A feast is like a lot of food, okay? So a very good example of this is in America, Thanksgiving. Families will get together, they'll cook a turkey, right? This is a turkey, and they'll have lots of stuffing. Here we have grapes, you can have potatoes, corn, cranberry sauce, gravy. Oh, I'm getting hungry. Okay, but anyway, there's a lot of food, right? And that's a feast. And people usually, traditionally, will celebrate holidays and special events by eating a large meal together with their family, because that's a great way to have a good time, to have a party, to rejoice, and to remember something that's important to their culture or their tradition. So let's have a feast. Okay. Our next word is firework, although we usually say fireworks because there are many of them. And what are fireworks basically? Fireworks, it says a display to show colorful lights for fun, but this is could be a little bit confusing. Don't get confused with like electric lights. No, these are lights caused by gunpowder, and gunpowder shot up into the sky with rockets, okay? And the rockets will shoot up in the sky and they'll explode in a colorful explosion of light. Now, of course, fireworks originated from China, but countries all over the world use fireworks, and you've probably seen firework displays before. And in some countries, fireworks are very, very common. I remember I lived in the Philippines for about a year, and it seems like almost every night they were firing fireworks off, big fireworks. The hotels would do that around the area for advertising, I think, and things like that. But fireworks are very common for celebrations. What's a celebration without some fireworks? A famous celebration in America, of course, that uses fireworks is the 4th of July, Independence Day. So that's very common. That's kind of like what the picture shows, the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., and there are many fireworks. Well, they're very colorful because they're explosions, and the explosion shoots out different dyes or different chemicals to make bright colors, reds, greens, blues, yellows. Very colorful display. And good fireworks display, they'll have like a big show at the end. They'll shoot up some rockets, but at the end, they're just going off all over the place. It's really exciting, and you really have to be there. It's hard to explain. But very, very interesting. And fireworks are very common to use for celebrations. Okay, next. Speech. Have you ever given a speech? Many people are nervous about speaking in front of other people. You give a speech, right? I need to give a speech tomorrow. I have to give a speech for my class. But you give a speech. And a speech, of course, is something that you say. It's a prepared remarks, usually has an introduction, body, conclusion. It's speaking by a speaker in front of many people. They are giving a speech. So I have some remarks, I have some comments, I have some things I would like to tell many people. I will give a speech. But a speech is usually a prepared group of remarks, and it has some structure to it. If you just get up in front of a television camera and have a press release or just answer questions, that's not a speech. A speech is something you wrote about, you thought about, and then you stand up before other people and you give that speech. Okay, those are our words for this lesson.
Lesson 2. Various celebrations. Festival. A day or time of celebration. Religious. Relating to religion. Patriot. A person who loves his or her country. Parade. A line of people, cars, and a musical band that moves through a public place. Feast. A large meal for a celebration. Firework. A display to show colorful lights for fun. Speech. Speaking by a speaker in front of many people.
So let's begin as usual with the vocabulary. The first word is nation. Nation simply means a country, right? So what country are you in right now? What country are you from? Are you watching this from Korea, which is a country? Are you watching this from Turkey? That's a country as well. Are you watching this from the United States? Also another country. So of course the world is divided into many countries, and we call these countries, or we can also say nations. Disaster. A disaster, oh, it's terrible. A disaster is something really bad. It's a very bad event. What are types of disasters? Well, fires, like a big fire, a flood. We see sometimes in the news, certain parts of the world have terrible floods when it rains too much. Or earthquakes, very terrible events that happen, and usually many people lose their lives, and many other people are injured or lose their homes or in danger because they have no food to eat after some type of disaster. So disasters are really bad events. Aid. Aid simply means help. It's a more formal word. It's a fancier word than help. Help is a very common word, but aid is a little bit more of a formal word. Aid just means help or support. So aid can be a noun. It can also be a verb. Aid as a noun is the things that you give to somebody to help them, especially in a disaster. But you can also aid somebody. That's a verb. That means to help them. So, of course, help can be a noun or a verb as well. But aid is just more formal than help. Supply. Supply can also be a noun or a verb. In this case, it's a noun because it means things that are needed, such as food, medicines, or clothes. And usually when we talk about, if we say supply is things, we usually say supplies, right? So supplies, when you're talking about a noun, and let's say you want to give some things that are needed to another person. They had a fire in their house, right? The family, they had a fire, they lost their home. So you say, well, gee, I want to help them out. So let's give them water, let's give them food, let's give them blankets, clothing. Those are supplies. Okay, so supply is a count noun, and we usually use it in the plural because you don't just give one supply, you give supplies to people, and it's various things, food, medicine, clothes, those are supplies. Okay. Next we have discuss. Discuss means to talk about something, to make a decision. And be careful because many of my Korean students will use the preposition about after discuss, but do not do that. That's wrong because discuss means to talk about. So when you say, let's discuss about the problem, you're saying, let's talk about the problem. Why would you say about twice? You don't need to. Discuss already means talk about. So just say, we should discuss the problem. We should discuss our plans, but do not use the preposition about after discuss. It sounds very strange, and native speakers do not do that. So please, if you don't get into that habit, okay? Don't use about after discuss. It's just discuss. Discuss the problem, discuss the plans, discuss the meeting, discuss something. Okay, good. Next, we have meeting. Meeting, of course, is when many people get together and they talk about something, they discuss something. An occasion is like an event or a time when people, and you can see many people, a meeting could just be two people, of course. You could have a two-person meeting. This is more typical, though, of a business meeting. Many people get together. And why do they get together? Because they want to discuss an issue. They want to discuss something. And usually they come to a decision. Not always, but usually they try to come to a decision. They try to decide something. So decide is a verb, decision is a noun. So we want to discuss something in order to make a decision or in order to decide something, a course of action. Next we have be made up of. Whew, it's 4 words, right? But this is a phrasal verb that means that various parts combine to make a whole. Be made up of, it says be composed of, but what does composed of mean? Composed of means that you have many different parts and you put them all together and that makes a whole thing. And you can say it's made up of. This is a good example because if you think of a hamburger, right, what is a hamburger made up of? A hamburger has many different parts. It has bread, it has vegetables, tomato, it has meat, it has more vegetables, pickles and lettuce, and it has bread on the top. So it is made up of all these things. It's missing something. What is it missing? Ketchup. There's no ketchup. Okay, but many people put ketchup on their hamburgers, so a hamburger is made up of many different things. And of course, you could put different things on your hamburgers. Some people get very creative with what they make their hamburgers up with. Okay, so to be made up of is to be composed of or to contain many different parts to make a whole thing. Okay. Finally, we have keep in touch. This is very important. Also a phrase. It's kind of an idiomatic expression. Keep in touch means to keep communicating. Ooh, that's a big word. Communicating, talking with somebody. So, if you have a friend and your friend moves away to a different town or a different nation, you don't want to lose that friend, so you want to keep in touch with that person. So maybe sometimes you send them email. Maybe you call them on the phone. Well, that's a very old phone, on your cell phone. Or you text them. You can text internationally these days as well. But you want to stay in touch. Stay in touch, keep in touch means the same thing. So stay in touch, keep in touch, it doesn't matter. They both mean the same thing. It means you don't lose touch with a friend who has moved away, friend or relative who has moved away. Okay, so that is our vocabulary for this lesson.
Lesson 3. We are part of the world. Nation. A country. Disaster. A very bad event such as fire, flood, or earthquake. Aid. Help or support. Supply. Things that are needed such as food, medicines, or clothes. Discuss. To talk about something to make a decision. Meeting. An occasion when people meet to discuss and decide something. Be made up of. Be composed of. Keep in touch. To keep communicating with somebody.
Let's start with the vocabulary as usual. The first word or phrase is actually two words, is local government. I mentioned that in the introduction to this lesson. Local government. When we think about government, there are different types of government. Local government is a government that controls a county, a city, or town, but not a country. So a local government is a smaller government. It might control, like they said, a county, a city, or a town. A town is smaller than a city, or a county. A county is a subdivision. In America, a county is a subdivision of a state, right? So let's take the example of California. California is one state, but there are many, many counties, smaller areas in California that have their own local governments, right? Of course, you have the national government that oversees all the states. Then each state has their own state government, and then each county might have their own government as well. Now, of course, if you have a town or a city, that's a large group of people. They need their own government for that town or city. So, government can get very complicated, different types of government. But local government is a small government for a small, specific area. Next, we have tax. Taxes. I hope you don't have to worry about taxes, but when you get older, yeah, everybody worries about taxes. Okay, so money, tax is money that the government collects from you. And there are different types of taxes. When you go to the store and buy something, now, not in Korea, you don't really, it's not apparent, it might be hidden. But in America, for example, they'll have what we call a sales tax. So let's say you go to the store and you buy an ice cream cone, and the ice cream cone is $1. So do you pay $1? No. You may pay $1.07 because the extra 7 cents is the sales tax on the ice cream. And it doesn't matter what you buy, whether it's ice cream, glue, gas for your car, taxes are added into that. So there's sales tax. There's income tax. When you earn money, you have to pay taxes. A portion of the money that you earn, you have to pay that to local or national government as part of taxes. And that's how the governments get the money that they need to do this, to perform the services that they do for the citizens. So the government collects money from you, but of course the government needs money in order to operate. Budget. So you have to be careful with money, right? And you need to make a plan for spending. Budget really is a plan for spending money. A plan for spending, I'll just put spending because obviously money. Spending, a plan for spending. So it's also the amount of money that is needed for a purpose. Yeah, you could say, if your parents want to buy something, let's say your family wants to buy a new car, your parents might say, we don't have the budget for that, or our budget will not cover that. In other words, they cannot make a proper plan to spend that amount of money because they don't have enough money. But be careful, budget is not money. Budget is a plan to spend money. So, and it's also can be used the amount of money that is needed for a purpose. So you could say a new car will not fit into our budget. It won't, it's not correct according to our plan. Okay, so budget. Be careful spending your money. Make a good budget. Okay. City council. Now, we talked about different types of government. We talked about local governments. Now, and remember, local governments can govern a certain area. We talked about town, city, county. And state could be local government too. But if you're talking just about a city council, that is the government that governs a whole city. And it's a council. A council means it is a group of people, right? A council is several people, usually 5, could be 7, 8, 9. Depends on the size of the city and how the city manages its affairs. And usually the council members, they might be in charge of different departments. Like one council member is in charge of making sure the roads are clean and safe. Another council member might be in charge of water or other services that you get at your home. So it depends, on the type of the city. And many different cities have different types of councils. So they're all different. It's very hard to give you an example of just one city council. But it's a city government which makes and passes laws. Now, it's important to realize that, of course, these laws are just for that city, and they do not contradict state or federal law, right? They don't make laws about crimes like murder or burglary. Those are state and federal laws. But they do make laws about when will garbage be collected? If you throw garbage on the street, what is the punishment for that? You can't just throw garbage on the street. What about parking? They will make laws about parking, garbage collection, utilities, electricity and water usage. So they make laws that are very specific and concern local issues. Okay, but big issues like murder, crime, robbery, robbery, other types of crime, those are usually state or federal laws. Okay. Lawmaker. Of course, who makes the laws? Very easy. Lawmaker. It's one word, but a lawmaker is a person who makes law. And there are many different levels. Like we just saw the city council, those people will make laws on a local level. Here we have a picture, and you notice the picture is the United States Senate. So this man is a member of Congress, Senate and House of Representatives. And all those people, what do? They make laws on a national level. They are also called lawmakers. So whether a person makes the laws at the national level, the state level, or the local city or county level, they are all lawmakers. They all make laws. And of course, a democratic society like America and many other countries around the world, laws are the key to having a successful democracy. Everybody must follow or obey the laws, and people need to make the laws, and sometimes the laws are changed for different situations. So being a lawmaker is a very important position, a very important, very responsible position to have in a democratic society. Okay. Constitution. Now, I heard that sometimes people have difficulty pronouncing this, and it's not really the words, it's just putting it all together. Is it easy to say this word? Constitution. When you have a large word like this, it's easy to think about it in different parts. There are 4 different parts, syllables, or in Korean, umjul, right? Sa umjuls. Okay, sorry. But 4 syllables in constitution. What are they? Constitution. So if you're having difficulty pronouncing a large word like this with usually 3 or more syllables, syllable, I'll spell that for you. And remember, syllable is like umjul. I can't talk and write at the same time. Yeah, that's right. Syllable. Syllable is like umjul. It's like you break the word into different syllables. So we say constitution. And then just put those words together a little bit more quickly each time. Constitution, 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 constitution. So it's constitution, okay? And constitution is basically a set of basic laws for a country. So each democratic country in the world will have a constitution. And a constitution just sets what are the basic laws, right? And they usually tell you what are your rights. In America, the Constitution gives people the right to freely assemble, meet, and gather. It gives them the right to say whatever they want as long as they don't harm anybody. It's a little complicated there, but you have freedom of speech. In America, you have the freedom to have a gun, to own a gun. So these are all rights that are given to you in the Constitution. They are laws that are granted to the citizens of a country. Okay, that's a constitution. Next, we have judge. So we talked about lawmakers before, people who make laws, but again, people have to follow the laws. So what happens when people don't follow the laws? Well, then they go to court and they must face a judge. And a judge is a person in a court of law, who decides how the law should be applied. So if someone breaks the law, well, first of all, we have to decide, did they really break the law or not? Some cases are like that. And the judge will say, oh, he didn't break the law. He acted within the law. There was no case. So sometimes that happens. But sometimes, and more often, people obviously break the law. There's no question about that. So the judge has to decide what will their what will the consequence of that be? What will happen to that person because they broke the law? Will they have to pay money or will they go to jail? So how do you apply the law in that case? Next, we have suggest. If you have an idea and you want to give that idea to another person, you say, oh, I have a good idea. I think you should do this. Then you are suggesting your idea. You are introducing your idea, or maybe you have a more formal idea. We call it a plan, and you've written it down. So you have a plan, and you want to introduce this and say, hey, this is a good thing to do, we should do this, then you are suggesting something. You're suggesting, for example, a course of action. So, and it could be very simple. I suggest we go to the beach this weekend. That's an idea, right? If it's hot and sunny outside, why not? That's a good suggestion. Okay, suggest, suggestion. Okay. Next, we have punishment. Remember, I just talked about judge, and the judge really decides what punishment should be made for someone who breaks the law. A punishment is a penalty. Penalty is a consequence, a negative consequence for doing something wrong. If you do something wrong, your mom might spank you. Now, this is an interesting picture. I had some discussion with a coworker, and we were discussing whether it was legal or not for parents to spank. What is she doing? This action, it's a verb, spank. Is it legal to spank your child? And it's interesting. I didn't know this, but I looked up on the internet. In Europe, in many European countries, it's illegal for parents to spank their children. In America, it's legal. Parents do have the right to spank their children, but they cannot cause harm or injury to that child. Of course not. That would be terrible. But, it's kind of an interesting thing. When I was young, nobody thought about that. I got spanked when I was a bad boy, right? So, it depends, on the degree and the extent of it. But it is a type of punishment. It's a negative consequence to doing something wrong. If you're caught doing something wrong, you will receive a penalty or a punishment. And again, like I said, that could be a fine. Maybe the judge makes you pay money, or the judge says you need to go to jail. Those are also types of punishments. Okay, good. Those are the vocabulary words for this lesson.
Lesson 4. Local government. Local government. A government that controls a county, city, or town, but not a country. Tax. Money that the government collects from you. Budget. The amount of money that is needed for a purpose. City council. A city government which makes and passes laws. Lawmaker. A person who makes law. Constitution. A set of basic laws for a country. Judge. A person in a court who decides how the law should be applied. Suggest. To introduce an idea or plan. Punishment. A penalty for doing something wrong.
The first word we have is Congress. Congress is the name for the group of U.S. lawmakers. Here I must make a little distinction, though. Congress is one branch of the government, and it's made up of two bodies. Congress is made up of the Senate, which they call the upper part, or it's the more formal, the more maybe a little bit more powerful part of Congress. And the other part, the lower part, is the House of, sorry, it's a long name, representatives. House of Representatives. So Congress actually has two parts. There's the Senate, it's the upper chamber, and the lower chamber is the House of Representatives. The Senate has fewer lawmakers in it, and the House of Representatives has many hundreds of members. But it's the name for the group of U.S. lawmakers. These people make laws for the whole country. And as you can see, it's a really big group. There's hundreds of people. I don't know, I don't think all of Congress is in there, but quite a few people are in there. And it looks like the State of the Union speech, I think, is what's going on. Maybe, it's hard to see in the picture. Okay, but anyway, that's Congress. Okay. Legislative. Legislative relates to making and passing laws. Legislative, legislation, right? Legislation. When people make laws and they enforce laws, or they talk about laws, they make laws, they pass laws, that's the legislative. And when we use this word, we talk about it to describe the part of government. So the legislative branch of the government. Usually we use branch because, we'll talk about this in this lesson. I'm getting ahead of myself, but there are three branches to the U.S. government, to the United States government. There's the legislative branch. That's one branch. We'll talk about the other branches next. But it's like a tree, right? Three different branches, and they're all equal. They should be equal in power. That's how you make sure that one person or one group doesn't take all the power and rule the country like a tyranny or a dictatorship. We don't want that. So hopefully we have three different branches of government to spread the power out among many different people. Okay, next. Executive. Now, executive is another branch of the government. So we have legislative is one branch, legislative, executive is the next branch. So executive relating to managing a group or organization. And of course at a company, right, you talk about the leaders of a company, we call them executives because they are the top managers of a group or organization. So the CEO is the chief executive officer at a company. They're the ones that are the top manager at that company or organization. In this case, we see a picture of President Obama. He is the executive. He is the leader of the executive branch of government. He's the leader of the United States. He manages, his job is to manage the United States, okay? But he doesn't have all the power, which is good. Okay, next. White House. White House. We would say the White House is the place where the President of the United States lives and works. So East Wing, West Wing. And of course, when you talk about East Wing, West Wing, we talk about the different parts of a big house. They call them wings. Like a big mansion will have different wings. So the East Wing is where the President has his office. And all the people that work on his or her staff have offices in the East Wing of the White House. The West Wing is where the president and his or her family lives, and that's where the kitchen is, and the living facilities are on the other side. So the president doesn't have to drive to work every morning, doesn't have to waste time. He just walks from the West Wing to the East Wing of the same house, and he's at work. Okay? Of course, presidents usually travel a lot anyway, but you want to make it convenient. You don't want them to waste time in commuting. They can just get to work right away. It's a very busy and important job, of course, to be the president. Next, we have Supreme Court, the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is the highest court in the United States. That's the third branch of government. It's the judicial branch. Judicial branch. So we've covered all three branches: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. What is the judicial branch? Judicial relates to court, judge, or system of law. Basically, the legislative branch makes the law. The judicial branch, I think it was over here, judicial branch enforces the law or interprets the law, right? And applies the law for various cases. So if somebody has a problem with the law, they either have a court case, they have a lawsuit, or they're in trouble and they broke the law, then the judicial branch, their job is to look at the case and determine what the law, how the law should be applied in that case. So they're more like enforcing and interpreting the law. Okay, so 3 branches of the government. And of course, branch. As I said before, I was getting ahead of myself. Branch. You have different branches. So we have the legislative branch, we talked about that. We have the executive branch, and we have the judicial branch. And these branches make up the federal government. It's a branch, of course, is a part of a large organization. Think of a tree, right, that has 3 different branches. They all come out from the same tree, and they should, in this case, in the federal government, they should all be equal. They should have, different powers. Of course, one branch might be a little stronger than the other, depending on who the people are in the branch, who is working in it. But this is a safety system. It's a way to spread power among different people so that not, like I said, not one person or one group can take all the power. You don't want that in a democratic society, or really any society, really. So, branch is a part of a large organization. Okay, so those are our words for this lesson.
Lesson 5. Federal Government. Congress. The name for the group of U.S. lawmakers. Legislative. Relating to making and passing laws. Executive. Relating to managing a group or organization. White House. The place where the President of the U.S. lives and works. Supreme Court. The highest court in the United States. Judicial. Relating to a court, judge, or system of law. Branch. A part of a large organization.
As always, we start with the vocabulary section. And our first word is an interesting word. It's heritage. What is heritage? This is a little bit of a difficult word, isn't it? Heritage means the important traditions and values that are handed down from one generation to the next. So heritage is something that you get from your parents and their parents and their parents before them. It's traditions and values, customs, and traditional beliefs that are handed down from generation to generation. That is heritage. Next, we have memorial. Every nation has statues around their country to remind the people of important events in the past and also famous people who helped make or shape the nation that the statue is in. So a memorial is a statue or some stone that is built in memory of someone or something important. So again, a memorial can be a statue to a famous person, or it can just be maybe a stone, a carved stone that remembers an event that happened in the past. Like, for example, a famous battle or some other event that was very important to the nation's history. Of course, the next word is remind, and that's what memorials do. They remind us of things that happened in the past, people and events that happened in the past. So remind means to make someone remember something or someone else. And of course, in this lesson, we're talking about important events or important people in the past. We should remember them. So there are statues or monuments to remind us of those people or events. Arch. Now, this is a famous arch in America. We'll talk about it later, but an arch is basically a structure that has a curved top, just like this. Of course, there's a very famous restaurant that's almost in every country in the world that is very famous for its double arches. Do you know what restaurant I mean? I'm sure you probably do. Okay, but this is just a single arch, and we'll talk about this later on. Banner. Now, there are many types of banners. A long time ago, when people fought wars, especially in medieval Europe, and of course in other parts of the world too, different armies or different groups in the battle would have these poles with a flag on it, and it's a type of banner, and it had the symbol of their group, of their clan, or of their family. And you could see the banner and know where your group or where your enemy was. So of course there are many types of banners. A flag is a type of banner, but a flag represents a country. So every nation in the world, of course, has a flag, and these are types of banners. Not every banner is a national flag, but country flags are types of banners. Okay. Next, we have national anthem. What is the national anthem of your country? Do you know it? It's a song that is very patriotic. It's a song that reminds us of our country and of the values of our country. And it's usually the official song of a country. Now, countries have official songs. Those are called national anthems. Sports teams might have their own song, and those would be, of course, just sports songs or team songs. But countries will have an official song, and it's called the national anthem. Next, we have Star Spangled. Now, Star Spangled really refers to the American flag because Star Spangled means it's covered or decorated with stars. And as you can see in this picture, the red circle is around the stars on the flag. Now, Star Spangled, what do those stars represent? There are many, many stars on the American flag. Why are there so many? Because each star represents one state in the United States. And if you know about America, you may know that there are 50 states in America, so there are 50 stars on the flag, a lot of stars. So when you cover or decorate something with a lot of stars, we say Star Spangled. And that's part of the national anthem of the U.S. They talk about the Star Spangled Banner. They're referring to the United States or the American flag. Fort. Of course, a fort is a very old type of building. It goes back thousands of years when civilizations first started becoming a feature of human life. People built forts to protect their civilization. But a fort is usually a smaller building. It's not a city or a village. It's a smaller area where only soldiers they work, or they may live there. A long time ago they might live there, but nowadays they just work there. And it's a walled building. Of course, forts aren't very important anymore in modern times, but they are still places for soldiers to work and to train and to do their jobs. Okay, so that's our vocabulary for this lesson.
Lesson 6. American Heritage. Heritage. Important traditions and values that were handed down from ancestors. Memorial. A statue or stone that is built in memory of someone or something important. Remind. To make someone remember something or someone else. Arch. A structure that has a curved top. Banner. A flag of a group or country. National anthem. The official song of a country. Star-spangled. Covered or decorated with stars. Fort. A building with a wall that is built for defense.
We start, of course, with the vocabulary, and as I said, pioneer, which is our first word, I mentioned that. That is what we called the people who moved from the east to the west. But a pioneer is anybody who goes into a new area and explores before other people. So it doesn't matter where in the world it might be. If somebody goes to the North Pole for the first time, they are a pioneer. If somebody goes to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean and looks around, explores, they are a pioneer. Nowadays, when we talk about pioneers, we're talking about space, the first people to the moon. Maybe soon we will have the first people to Mars. They will be pioneers. So pioneers are just anybody who goes to a place where people have not gone before and explores it before other people come to that place as well. A trail. A trail is a long, rough track made by the movement of people or animals. Now, a long time ago, of course, before people knew how to ride horses, they walked around by foot. And also, animals were walking around, obviously, by their forefeet, by their hooves. And as many animals or people went along a way, they would make a trail, right? The grass wouldn't grow there because too many animals or people are passing back and forth along this land for a long time. And so what they do is they make a trail. So a trail is the very first pathway that people used to move from one place to another. Of course, later on came roads and then highways, and now we have interstates, right? But trails go back thousands of years. It's a long, rough track made by the movement of people or animals. Prepare. To prepare is to make yourself ready for something. You don't just make yourself ready, you also maybe prepare equipment. So you get all the stuff that you need, you put it in a certain place. You could also prepare yourself mentally. Maybe you're going to do some sports, so you prepare yourself mentally to play a game of soccer. But prepare just means to make ready for something, some event. Next we have attack. There's not a difficult word, but it's kind of a interesting word. An attack is an act of violence to hurt a person or damage a place. Here we see the dog is trying to attack the person here. It looks like they're training the dog. Maybe it's a police dog. But that is a type of attack when somebody starts an act of violence in order to hurt or damage somebody or some place. Next, we have force. Force is the use of physical power to make someone do something against his or her will, to force somebody to do something. Next, we have journal. Do you keep a journal? A journal is basically a daily record of personal experience. If you go on a trip somewhere, it's a good idea to keep a journal, to write down what you saw, who you met, and what you did. That would be a journal. The last word is continue. To continue is to keep doing something. For example, this is an interesting picture. I see what they're doing. They're doing the baton race, or it's a relay race, right? So one runner has a baton, runs, and he passes the baton to the next person, and the next person starts running. They're continuing the race. They're keeping the baton moving. in the relay race. Okay, so to continue is to keep doing what you are doing. Unfortunately, we can't continue with the vocabulary because that's the last word, so we'll move on to the next section. Okay.
Lesson 7. Go west. Pioneer. A person who goes into a new area and explores before others. Trail. A long, rough track made by the movement of people or animals. Prepare. To make ready for something. Attack. An act of violence to hurt a person or damage a place. Force. To make someone do something against his or her will. Journal. A daily record of personal experience. Continue. To keep doing something.
Our first word for this lesson is slavery. Slavery is the condition of being a slave. What is a slave? We'll see that that's a word coming up soon. Next we have plantation. A plantation is a large farm where people grow crops. And plantations were usually in the southern part of America, where the temperature, the climate was very warm, and it was good for growing many different types of crops, especially cotton. So a plantation is like a very big farm. Next we have slave. As I said, we have that word coming up. We saw slavery before as the condition of being a slave, but what is a slave? A slave is a person who is owned by another person and works for that person without payment. Unfortunately, for thousands of years, human beings have treated other human beings as slaves. And we can see this in many historical periods and in many parts of the world. And that's basically slavery. When you own another person, usually people would fight wars, and the losers, if they weren't killed, they were taken as slaves and forced to work for no money. Now, a servant is someone who works in another person's home. And usually when we think of servants, servants are paid for their work. For example, a housemaid or a butler. Usually, of course, these days, obviously, servants are paid for their work. So there are still servants around today. And of course, servants have been around again for thousands of years as well. But usually servants would receive money or some kind of compensation for working in usually a rich person's house. Escape. Escape means to get away from something, to run away from something, to leave a situation that is dangerous or unpleasant. Maybe you want to escape from your homework. Yeah, but it's important to do your homework, so don't escape. Okay, do your homework, and then you can escape and have fun with your friends. Okay, good. So that's escape. Civil War. Now, many countries have had many different wars. The Civil War is a war in America that occurred between 1861 to 1865, and it was a war between the southern states and the northern states of America. As you know, we talked about in a previous lesson, America has many different states. And in the northern part of America and the southern part of America, there are many states. Now, a civil war, it doesn't matter what country. Other countries have also had civil wars. It's when one part of the country decides they don't want to be part of the bigger country. They want to break away and make their own country. And so we call that situation a civil war when fighting breaks out over that issue. That would be a civil war. Okay, and in this case, when Americans talk about the Civil War, they're talking about the war between southern states and northern states. Okay. Cotton. I mentioned this before when I talked about plantations. Cotton is a kind of plant that produces white, soft hairs used to make clothes. So obviously, this is a very important crop or plant. And this is the white cotton ball, right? I don't know if you're probably too young to know this, but people used to use, they still do use cotton balls sometimes for medicine, right? If you have a wound, a scar, your mom might take a cotton ball, put it in some alcohol or some disinfectant, and brush your hand with it to help disinfect your cut. But cotton was also pulled apart and used to make thread in clothes. And this, of course, was very important in making clothes, which is a very important industry in the 1800s and is still an important industry today. So it was a very important crop, and it was usually grown in the southern states. Why? Again, because they had a lot of wide open land and the climate was very warm, good for growing plants. Okay. Sugarcane. Sugarcane was also another, and still is, a very important crop. Of course, it's a kind of plant that produces sweet, crystal-like material used for cooking. Sweet, crystal-like material used for cooking. That's sugar, okay? So when you want to put a little bit of sugar, right, on your cereal, well, don't put sugar on your cereal. Your cereal already has too much sugar. But anyways, many foods, they put sugar into it, and they get sugar from sugar cane. Did you know that? These plants, they look like bamboo, don't they? But they can dry them, they can process these plants and make sugar out of these plants. So again, sugar was another very important crop like cotton that is grown in southern states and also in many small islands in the Caribbean. Okay, those are our words for this lesson.
Lesson 8. The End of Slavery. Slavery. The condition of being a slave. Plantation. A large farm where people grow crops. Slave. A person who is owned by another person and works for that person without payment. Servant. A person who works in another person's house. Escape. To get away from something. Civil War. The war between the southern states and the northern states. Cotton. A kind of plant that produces white soft hairs used to make clothes. Sugarcane. A kind of plant that produces a sweet crystal-like material used for cooking.
Of course, we always start with the vocabulary, and our first word in this lesson is museum. Have you ever been to a museum? A museum is a place where important historical things are displayed. So people gather things from a long time ago and they put them in the museum because we can learn about how people lived in the past. And a museum is a good place to go to see these things. Next, we have artifact. So I just said we go to a museum to see these things from the past. These things, we can call them artifacts, because an artifact is an object that was made a very long time ago. So when you go to the museum, you can see things that were made hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, made by people who lived a long time ago. And we call these things artifacts from the past. Okay. Carriage. Have you ever ridden in a carriage? Probably not. There used to be carriages everywhere, right? Many people used to ride in carriages in many countries all around the world. But a carriage is a kind of vehicle with wheels that was pulled by horses. So we have a horse-drawn carriage. Very common to say horse-drawn carriage, because drawn in this case means pulled. The horse is pulling the carriage. And in fact, as you can see, this is a modern picture, and in some parts of America, some people still live in an old traditional way. They don't believe in using cars or even electricity. They don't have cell phones. They don't use electric lights in their houses, and they don't use cars. Instead, they have horses and carriages to get around. And so you can still see this actually in some parts of America, like Pennsylvania, Ohio, in that area. Okay, so that's very interesting. But anyway, carriage is a horse-drawn carriage, an old type of transportation. Invention. An invention is something that someone has made for the first time. So if you grow older, or even now, if you have a great idea and you make something that has never been made before, and it's useful, many people want to use it, you might become a famous inventor, right? Because you have made a useful invention, something that someone has made for the first time. And of course, we see this picture. Who are these two famous inventors? Well, you can see their name. This is a French stamp, though. It's in French, but that's fine. Wilbur and Orville Wright. So it's Orville and Wilbur Wright, although Orville is spelled in the French way, and Wilbur Wright. The Wright brothers, what did they invent? They invented the airplane, or a flying machine. Okay, so they are famous inventors. But there's many famous inventors in history. Communicate. To communicate, that's a long word, isn't it? Communicate. Communicate. Basically, that means to express your ideas or your feelings, or to exchange information. Right now, I'm communicating to you with the words that are coming out of my mouth, but I'm also communicating with you in other ways. I'm using body language. People can communicate without speaking. They can just communicate with their facial expressions. You can also communicate by writing something to someone or typing it on your computer. So there are many different ways to communicate with other people. And of course, animals communicate with each other as well, also by their body language, by the sounds they make, and by the actions that they do. That is also a type of communication. So there are many types of communication. Connect. Connect means to link two things together, to connect something to in this case, an electrical or communication system. So if you are connected to the internet, you use a cell phone or a computer to connect to the internet, to link to the internet, to be connected to it. Okay? Also, if you have a lamp, let's say you buy a new lamp, you take it home, you plug it into the wall, you connect the lamp to the electric system in your house. Okay? So to connect, to link two things together. In this case, we're talking about linking something to the electrical or communication system. Next, we have telegraph. What is a telegraph? Of course, you don't remember. I don't remember, right? That's a very long time ago. People wanted to communicate over very long distances, but they didn't have computers. They didn't have the internet. They didn't even have telephones. What was the first way to communicate over a very long distance? Well, of course, you might think, oh, fires, yeah, and smoke, right? Korea had a very developed system to warn people of foreign invaders coming into the country with smoke, but a lot of countries did that. Sometimes they used drums, right? But smoke and fire were also good communication devices. But then they invented something that was called the telegraph, and the telegraph used wires and electricity, and you could spread the wires really far between two people. And if you typed or you tapped, basically the telegraph was just a little instrument, you tapped on it and it made a sound. Dit, 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 and you could hear that sound over the wire hundreds of miles or hundreds of kilometers, even thousands of kilometers away from each other. One person could tap on one part and another person on the other end of the wire could hear those taps. And what they did was they used short tap and a long tap. And that was called Morse code. Morse code. Morse code. And they had a series of dots and dashes. So dot, 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 right? So you could make letters. So these dots and these dashes corresponded to different letters of the alphabet. And so people who were very good at using the telegraph were called telegraph operators. Telegraph operators, they would sit there and they'd hit the little key, da, 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 and they were very good. They knew the code and they could send messages very far distances. So it's an electric system for sending a long distance message. And by the way, telegraph operators, they call them telegraph operators because they operated the telegraph machine. And of course, when telephones came later on, we got rid of telegraphs, but we kept the word operator. So it's very common on the phone, people would call and they just dial 0 for the operator, and they would say, operator, please connect me to so-and-so in New York. And the operator would make the call for you. Okay, so it's interesting. Words that are developed for one technology are sometimes carried over to the next technology. Okay, but anyway, telegraph. Okay, next, internet. Of course, we don't use telegraphs anymore. Whew, that would take all day to sit there, tap, 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 right? Now we use the internet and we don't just type, we don't just send words to each other, we send pictures and movies and sound. We get all sorts of different types of communication, can be transferred over the internet. And of course, the internet is a worldwide computer network. So we're not just talking about thousands of kilometers, we're talking about all over the world. Basically anywhere, almost anywhere in the world you can go, you can get connected to the internet and communicate with somebody on the other side of the world. So we are living in a very fortunate time. You're very lucky, of course, to have the internet these days. Okay, well that's our vocabulary for this lesson. Let's continue with the main ideas.
Lesson 9. Changes in people's lives. Museum. A place where important historical things are displayed. Artifact. An object that was made a very long time ago. Carriage. A kind of vehicle with wheels that is pulled by horses. Invention. Something that someone has made for the first time. Communicate. To express ideas or feelings, or to exchange information. Connect. To link something to an electrical or communication system. Telegraph. An electric system for sending a long-distance message. Internet. A worldwide computer network.
Our first word is occupation. Occupation. Occupation is just a job that a person has. So occupation is a fancy word for job. Okay. Next we have skill. Skill is the ability that is needed to do something. I'm sure that you have a certain skill. Maybe you're good at playing a piano. Skill means you are good at doing something. The ability that is needed to do something, yes, but also that you are good at something. If you're good at playing a piano, you have the skill to play piano. Maybe you have musical skills. If you play sports really well, you have athletic skills. Okay? If you study very well, you have good memory skills or maybe good reading skills. Okay? So skill is the ability needed to do something. Next, we have training. Training is when you learn skills or knowledge that you need to do to perform a job, to do a job, to work at a job. Now, training can be a lot of different types of training. You can train from a book, but many people consider training as actually doing the things or learning the skills that you need to do a job. And sometimes people say on-the-job training. On-the-job training. On-the-job training means learning how to do a job while you're working, right? So when you start a new job, maybe an older person or a more experienced person will show you how to do that job. That's called on-the-job training. Free enterprise. Free enterprise is the idea, the concept that is very important to a capitalistic, open, democratic society. That means that you have the freedom to run a business to earn money. It's your choice. You have the freedom. If you want to make a company that makes pillows and you want to sell pillows to people, you have the freedom to do that. If you want to sell drinks, lemonade, not Gatorade, don't do that. Somebody's already doing it. Lemonade, orangeade, or, jamang, grapefruitade. You can do that. Whatever idea you have the freedom to start your own business. That is free enterprise. Income. Income is the money that you earn from doing a job. Why get a job? Because you need to earn money to pay for your housing, your food, your clothes, your transportation. We need money in order to live in our society. So you want to get a job, hopefully a job that you like doing, that you are skilled at, and from that job you receive money. That money is called income. And income is usually regular amounts of money every month or every 2 weeks that you receive from doing a job. And many people will talk about their yearly income or their monthly income. Next, we have service job. In our society, there are many different types of jobs. There's manufacturing jobs where people make things. But there are also service jobs where people, they don't make things, but they provide services. They do things for other people. For example, this man here, he is delivering packages. Right? We don't have time to go to another country or another state or somewhere far away and get the thing that we want. No, we buy it maybe through the internet, and then somebody will deliver it to us. That's a service that they provide for us. So that is a service job. Service job is a job that provides people with a service, such as a mail carrier. For example, this man here, or a delivery person. A bus driver. Bus drivers, they provide a service. They transport you from your home to your school. Or a hairstylist. Do you cut your hair by yourself? Do you want your mom to cut your hair? It's better to go to a hairstylist who will cut your hair in a nice, fashionable way. That's a hairstylist. And these are all different types of service jobs. Okay, that's our vocabulary for this lesson.
Lesson 10. Work and income. Occupation. A job that a person has. Skill. The ability that is needed to do something. Training. Learning skills or knowledge that a person needs to do a job. Free enterprise. The freedom to run a business to earn money. Income. The money that a person earns from his or her job. Service job. A job that provides people with a service, such as a mail carrier, bus driver, hairstylist.
The first word in our vocabulary section is plan. It's very important to plan ahead, to make a plan. To plan, in this case, you can use it as a verb, by the way. It's more commonly used as a verb, but it can also be a noun for formal situations. Plan means to think about and decide what you will do. So let's plan something for the weekend. Let's plan for our future. Do you have any plans for tomorrow? Okay, that's a noun. But to plan means just to think about ahead of time and to make decisions before the events occur so that you have a good idea and you can kind of control the future that way. That's the whole idea behind planning for the future. Predict. Predict is to think about what will or might happen in the future. So you predict, you think about, it's very easy to predict things that are going to happen tomorrow or next week. It's more difficult to predict things that will happen next year. Of course, we can plan for these things, and that's what we should do. We should think, okay, what's going to happen tomorrow? I have a test, right? So can I predict, will I do well on the test or am I going to do poorly on the test? So plan ahead, study, study today, study tonight and in the morning tomorrow, and then you will be prepared for the test tomorrow. So you can predict what will happen in the future. Of course, we can't predict 100%, right? But we can plan ahead and we can think about what will happen. Next, we have give up. Now, give up is actually a good skill to have. Sometimes you have to give things up. You have to make good choices. You may want something, or you might like to do something, but it might be bad for you, or it might be a bad choice. So to give up means to stop doing something. The example here, of course, is we have junk food and we have healthy food. If you like to eat a lot of junk food, at some point you're going to have to say, okay, I have to give up the junk food. Stop eating junk food. That's to give it up and eat the healthier food, bananas, apples, oranges. Of course, pancakes, donuts, pastries are good to eat, but not too much, right? So give it up, maybe a little bit, but don't eat it all the time. Next, shopper. Next we have shopper. A shopper is a person. ER. We form nouns with ER to talk about people who do things, right? People who shop are called shoppers. So if you have a verb, which is to shop, to go to the store and buy something, and you make it into a noun that describes a person who does this, just add ER. Shopper, of course, is a person who buys things from a shop. We are all shoppers at some time in our lives. Choice. Choice is to make a decision about, do I want this or do I want that? So you have to make a decision. Which one will you buy? Which one will you eat? Which one will you use? Choosing one thing from among other things. And it's, of course, it's not just two things. That's a simple example. Sometimes it could be, 10, 20 different things. You go into a supermarket, there's 20 different brands of milk. Which one do I buy? You have to make a decision to choose one. Okay. Scarce. Scarce means there's not enough of something, or it's rare. Rare means there's not a lot of something. For example, gold. There's not a lot of gold. You can't just go outside and find gold in the ground. Gold is very rare. It is scarce. That's one of the reasons why it is so valuable. Valuable. What am I saying? Valuable. Scarce. Also, money, unfortunately, is sometimes scarce, right? We have to earn it and be careful about spending it. Otherwise, as you can see, this person, there's no money left, just 2 pennies. So money is scarce for this person. Figure out. Are you good at figuring things out? I'm sure you are. Figure out means to be able to understand something. So if you're reading a book, maybe it's a book about math or science or something like that, and you read it and you understand it, you may have to read it a couple times, but then, I understand it. You figured it out, right? It might be a puzzle. It might be difficult to understand at first, but if you read it a few times, if you listen to the explanation given by the teacher, or you go on the internet and you read more about it, you say, okay, I understand now. I figured it out. Put aside. Put aside means to save something for later. And this is a good example, right? This person has some money. Now, they could spend that money now. Hey, let's go out to the movies. Let's buy some popcorn. Let's buy some junk food. Let's buy a new bike or a new toy or a new game that I want to play. You could spend that money now, or you could put it aside for the future, right? It says now is here and the future is later, right? So you put it aside. You save it for later. Okay. Those are our words for the vocabulary section.
Lesson 11. Making money choices. Plan. To think about and decide what you will do. Predict. To think and tell what will happen in the future. Give up. To stop doing something. Shopper. A person who buys things from a shop. Choice. Choosing one thing from among other things. Scarce. Not enough. Rare. Figure out. To be able to understand something. Put aside. To save something for later.
We have many words in the vocabulary section about saving money. The first one is deposit. Deposit can be a verb, and it can also be a noun. In this case, it's a verb because we see to put. Then we know it's a verb. So to put money in a bank. So do you have any money? If your parents give you some allowance maybe every week, maybe you could ask your mom or your dad to help you make a bank account, and you can deposit. When you put money in the bank, you deposit the money in the bank. You could also make a deposit. In that case, it's a noun. To make a deposit. A deposit is the act of putting money in the bank. That's a noun. So it can be a verb or it can be a noun. To deposit money in a bank or to make a deposit. Okay. Next we have in return. If I give you something, will you give me something in return? in return is as a way of paying someone for something. When you go to the store, right, and you want to buy a key, no, I'm just kidding. That's some other situation. You want to buy candy or a toy, right? You give the store owner or the person who works at the store, you give them some money. In return, they give you the object that you want to buy. This picture shows maybe somebody's buying a car, or maybe they're buying a house or something. That's not a lot of money to buy. Well, I don't know what currency is that. Oh, I thought that was Korean money. I don't know what currency that is. So I'm not sure how much money that is. But maybe they'll make many payments. But anyway, you give money. In return, the person gives you something else. So you give someone A, they give you B in return. Okay? It's a way of paying someone for something. Okay, the next word is interest. Now, interest, are you interested in this lesson? Okay, well, that's a different meaning of interest, right? So, but anyway, in this case, we're talking about interest at a bank. It's the extra money that you receive, you get from having money in a bank. This is a little complicated or a little difficult concept, but let me make it easy for you. Let's say you have $10, right? You have $10 or manwon, and you put it into the bank. Usually, maybe the bank will give you 2% interest. 2% interest. That means after 1 year, they will give you 2% of the money you have in the bank. They'll just give it to you, just for having your money in the bank. What is 2% of $10? Well, 2% of $10 is $0.20, right? That's 20 cents. It's not a lot of money, but it is some money, right? And it's free. Well, it's free. You put it in the bank, you don't use it, and the bank gives you money. Why does the bank do that? Because if another person borrows $10, or if they borrow $10, then the bank charges them interest. That's a different type of interest. They might charge that person 5% interest. So basically, at the end of the year, that person has to pay back $10 plus 50 cents, because 5% of $10 is 50 cents, right? So if you borrow that money, you have to pay back $10 plus 50 cents. The bank, what happens with the bank? The bank, of course, what's the difference between 50 cents and 20 cents? Is 30 cents, right? So the bank makes money by doing that. Anyway, that's interest. The main idea is that if you put your money in the bank will give you a small percentage of that back every year, every half year. It depends on what the bank policy is. They will give you a small percentage of your money back in interest. So if you have a lot of money, you put it in the bank, you get interest on that money. You don't have to do anything, just keep it in the bank. Of course, the bank is using your money to make money themselves, and they give you a percentage of that. But that's interest. That's the extra money you receive from the money you have in the bank. Check. Okay, now, this lesson is, of course, from the American textbook reading series. American. Americans use checks, and this is a good picture of a check. Now, many countries don't use checks. For example, in Korea, you do not use checks. So it's a little difficult to explain this concept sometimes to Koreans. And in fact, I appreciate the Korean system more than I do the American system. When I was in America, of course, you have a savings account and you have a checking account. They're different. It might be the same bank, but your savings account, that's just money you put in there and you don't take the money out. You just get interest. But then you have a checking account. You open a checking account, you put money in there, and the bank doesn't give you checks. The bank makes you buy a checkbook with checks in it. That's another way they make money. Anyway, that's American banks. And then when you go to the store, right? You go to the store and you want to buy something. Now, you can use money, right? Just paper money and just give them the money. Or you can use a check, or you can use a credit card. So you're going to pay by cash, by check, or by credit? By cash, by check, or by credit? Those are three different ways to pay at a store or restaurant when you want to buy something. Now, a check, of course, is a piece of paper like this. It's in a book that you tear off. You might have 50 or 100 checks in your book, and it's a piece of paper that orders a bank to pay money from a checking account. Now, let me show you how the check works here. Up here, you put the date. So you might put August 5th, and then, of course, the year, 2020. And then you say, here it says pay to the order of, and you write the name of the restaurant. So let's say ABC Restaurant, ABC Restaurant. And then here it says how much? $1,000. Oh my God, what did you eat? Okay, I'm just kidding. But that's, $1,000 right there, okay? So then you have to spell that out. For some reason, they just put 1,000. You should put 1, and they already spelled out 1,000. $1,000. And then here, that's optional. You can say, I ate 100 Big Macs, right? Big Macs. I was really hungry. Okay, and then you sign, right? You just sign your name on this part here. Now, what happens is you give that check to the restaurant owner, and the restaurant owner takes those checks. They get maybe many checks from many different customers. They go to the bank and they put those checks into their bank account. Now, their bank might be ABC Bank, and your bank is XYZ Bank. So they put their check in the ABC Bank. ABC Bank sends the checks to your bank, XYZ Bank, and XYZ Bank takes the money out of your checking account and sends it to the restaurant owner's bank account. It's very complicated, okay? But that's how many Americans will pay for things. Now, paying by check is a little old-fashioned these days. Many Americans still use checks. Checks are still very common in America, but people are moving away from checks and they're doing internet banking or wire transfers. In Korea, of course, you do a lot of wire transfers or internet banking. I like the Korean system much better. Checks are old-fashioned, okay? Hopefully, Korea will never use checks, okay? It's much simpler just to have one bank account and don't worry about checks. And just have internet banking on your phone or just transfer money at an ATM, okay? Whew. But checks are a little bit complicated. But they're mostly in America, and other countries will use them as well. I'm familiar with the American system because I did use checks when I was younger. When I moved to Korea, no checks. Much easier. Count yourself lucky. Okay, next. Bill. What is a bill? A bill is a piece of paper listing costs that you should pay for using goods or services. Well, of course, you should pay your bills with money, obviously, but a bill, let's say you go to the grocery store. That's what this is. Looks like they went to the grocery store and they bought raspberries. And raspberries, what is it? $2.99. So they bought raspberries. Raspberries are $2.99. And they also bought, it looks like Italian Parmesan cheese, and that was $2.07. So the bill lists everything that they bought. If you go to a restaurant, again, using the restaurant example, you buy a meal, but you might buy a salad too, and a drink. All of those items are listed on the bill, and the total is on the bottom of the bill. The total is how much you should pay. And usually they also add tax to that. So that is the bill. And bills are just statements saying how much you owe a person or a company because you used their goods or services. Okay, that is a bill. Credit card, I mentioned this before. Of course, that's one of the ways to pay people for using their goods or services. You can pay cash, you can pay by check, you can pay by credit card. Of course, many people just say by credit. They don't say card, but that's okay. Credit card is a plastic card that you can use instead of cash. It's very convenient. It's much better than using a check. Just give them your card and it automatically takes the money out of your bank account. Well, that's a debit card. Credit card, when you use a credit card, That's a good difference. There's a credit card and there's a debit card. A debit card, it just automatically comes out of your bank account. With a credit card, at the end of the month, you get a bill. The credit card company will send you a bill. Say, okay, you used your credit card at this store. You used your credit card at this restaurant 2 days later. Every day, and the amount, the money that you used at each store is listed on your credit card bill, and at the end of the month, you pay that bill. So that's another example of a bill.
Lesson 12. In the bank. Deposit. To put money in a bank. In return. As a way of paying someone for something. Interest. The extra money that you receive from having money in a bank. Check. A piece of paper that orders a bank to pay money from a checking account. Bill. A piece of paper listing costs that you should pay for using goods or services. Credit card. A plastic card that you can use instead of cash. Savings account. A bank account that earns interest. Checking account. A bank account which you can take money out of at any time using your checkbook or cash card.
As usual, we start with the vocabulary. And the first word in our vocabulary list, or actually two words, is absolute location. What does that mean? Absolute location. Well, you may know what location means. Location is, where something is. When we talk about location, we're talking about, is it in this state? Is it in this country? Is it on this street? Where something is. Absolute means very precise, very, very detailed. So absolute location means the exact is this, it means very precise or very accurate, exact location of a place. So some people might talk about absolute location. However, most people just say location. Absolute location is more of a technical term used for very precise language, okay? Most people just say location. What is the location of your school? Or where is your school located? You could also use it that way. Okay, let's move on. Relative location. See, now we saw absolute location. Now we have relative location, and we can tell from the different words that these two ideas are different. Absolute location is the exact location of an object or something. Relative location is a way of describing where something is by comparing it to other things. For example, you can see in this map here, right? You have my location, looks like an apartment building. Maybe you are in an office building. This could be an office building too. Let's say it's an office building. And where is your office building? Well, it's close to your home. It's about a block away from your home. So that's a relative location when you compare where something is compared to something else. Absolute location is just giving the information to say exactly where it is located. And we'll talk about that, of course, in this lesson. Okay, so that's the difference between absolute location, the exact location, and relative location, just where is it compared to other things. Okay. Next we have column. Column. Now, sometimes you'll look at a table or maybe a map, and you'll see that there are rows going across, right? There are numbers that might go across. We call those rows. There might be numbers going down. Those are called columns. So in a table, there are rows and columns. So a column is a line of words or numbers written under each other that goes down a page. You read the column down from the top to the next underneath. You don't go like this, right? You read straight down. And on a row, of course, you read straight across, just like as if you're reading text or reading some English. English reads from left to right. Not all languages do, of course. Okay, that's a column. A row, we just talked about row. Row, of course, are the numbers of the words that are going across in a table or in some kind of grid. A grid is a system of lines going down, up and down, and across. That's a grid. And if you read the numbers or words on a grid that are going across, that is a row. So you might have several rows in your table. A row is a set of straight lines on a map that makes squares. You could also say that. On a map, you can divide your map with lines that are going up and down and also across. So you can see in the column on that map grid, you can go down the column or you can go across. And this is a good way to find something in a map, an absolute location, for example, because if you number the rows or the columns across the top, A, B, C, D, E, and you number the rows going down, 1, 2, 3, 4, you can say H4, and you go across H, that's your column. Go down the column until you see the row 4, and boom, it's in that square. If you ever play the game Battleship, that's exactly what's going on, right? You call out a number, A5, miss or hit, right? And then you hit the battleship or not. So that's a fun game to play, but that's exactly what we're talking about here with columns and rows. Okay. Map grid. Map grid, I just explained that, right? You take a map and you make a set of straight lines on a map that make squares. So you have lines that go up and down, usually north to south, because it's a map, and then you have lines that go from west to east, or east to west, it doesn't matter, south to north. But anyway, you have lines that are perpendicular to each other. That means a 90-degree angle, and they make squares on your map. So you have a map and you make these small squares on your map so that you can easily find out where something is. Like I said, you say, my house is located in H4. Yeah, my house is in that square. Okay, great. Now you can make the square small or you can make the squares big, right? So depending on how exact or detailed you want the map coordinates to be. Coordinates are a set of numbers that tell you where something is on a map. Okay, and the GPS system that you might use in your phone uses the same system. Okay. Next we have separate. Separate means apart from each other. They're not together, they are separate. Okay, so it just means apart from each other. And we have this is a very interesting picture, isn't it? Those are weird looking office buildings. It looks like they're going to fall. Oh no. No, of course I'm sure they're engineered so that they do not fall, but they're pretty cool looking, right? This is kind of cool architecture. Right? Okay, so of course the office buildings were probably built by the same builder, maybe the same architect made them, of course, because it would look silly if there was just one of them. What's going on? So you have two of them, but they're not together physically, they are separate. Of course, they are together aesthetically in terms of their design. They're together, but they're not touching each other. They are separate. Envelope. Some people say envelope, envelope. Doesn't matter. It does. Nobody's going to care which way you say it. Envelope or envelope. Most people, I think, say envelope. Envelope, of course, is a paper container in which people put a letter or a card. Of course, if somebody has a birthday, you get them a birthday card, right? You sign the inside of the birthday card, then you close the card and you put it inside an envelope. And then you give it to the person. You put the person's name on it, right? Well, a long time ago, before you were born, people used to send paper to each other, and they called these things letters. Okay, they would write on a piece of paper their message, they would fold it up, put it in an envelope, and they would go to the post office and mail it. It takes maybe a day, sometimes several days, depending on how far away you're sending your letter. The other person would receive it and read your letter. Yeah, that was before email, of course. You probably have no idea. So anyway, an envelope, when you did that, you had to put the address, right, on the envelope. Of course, nowadays we still use that, but most of the time it's just boxes and company. Like you order something on the internet and the company will send it to you, but they put their address, not in an envelope, it's in a box because you ordered some goods. But they still put your address on it. So just basically an envelope is a paper container in which people put a letter or card. The idea, of course, is that we're writing the address here. Of course, nowadays, you're more familiar with boxes. Same idea. You still have to write somebody's address on this, in this space so that the letter or the box gets to your house. Okay, those are our words for today.
Lesson 13. Maps and locations. Absolute location. The exact location of a place. Relative location. A way of telling a location by comparing a place to another. Column. A line of words or numbers written under each other that goes down a page. Row. A line of things next to each other. Map grid. A set of straight lines on a map that make squares. Separate. Apart from another. Envelope. A paper container in which people put a letter or card.
As usual, we start with the vocabulary, and we have the first word here, landform, right? I mentioned that in the introduction of this lesson. What is a landform? Well, of course, it has two words. Two words were combined to make one word, and we know what land is. Land, of course, is the earth. You know, you look around, you see the land. Form, of course, means shape. So the land has many different shapes, right? It's a shape on the surface of the earth. And of course, we can see that. You look around, you can see mountains. Well, that's a shape of the land. That's a particular shape of the land. That's a landform. Sometimes you see even if it's just very flat, we call those plains, right? And that is another type of landform. So there are many different landforms. Let's take a look. So the next word is stretch. Stretch means to reach out. And the reason we're looking at this word here is because, like I just said, you know, sometimes you have plains, that's a landform. But if you look out across these plains, the land seems to stretch out forever, right? It's to reach out. To stretch is like to reach out. I'm stretching. Of course, you might stretch in the morning. Oh, you're right. You reach out with your arms and your feet, your hands and your feet, and you stretch your body, right? Well, stretch out means just to reach out. It also means to like to pull or to go on forever. It seems to stretch out. And that's what this picture shows us. The land is stretching out all the way to the horizon. This is, I should just mention this, that's an H, horizon. Teaching you a new word here. Horizon is where the land meets the sky, right? That's the horizon. So the land stretches out to the horizon. Okay. Next word we talked about this already, mountain. Now I said mountain, but we can also add another word, mountain range. So what's the difference between mountain and mountain range. Well, if you just say, look at the mountain over there, it might just be one mountain. Just, there's a plane, then boom, there's a mountain, but it's all by itself. It's like the Lonely Mountain from J.R.R. Tolkien's Hobbit, okay? Just one mountain sitting out there. But if the mountain is not alone, if there's a lot of mountains and they're all in a row, right? They all seem to be on a line, and there's another mountain, a bunch of mountains behind those, we call those mountain ranges. So a mountain range is a series of mountains. It's not just one mountain, it's many mountains next to each other, and they're all connected, right? You might have a mountain, which is the peak, but you still have high land connecting it to the next mountain, and that is a mountain range. And in the world, there are many famous and very big, very long mountain ranges. Gulf. A gulf is another type of landform, even though we're talking about water, but it's still, it's a shape of the land and the water. A gulf is an area of water that is partly surrounded. That's important. By land. It's partly, because if it was completely surrounded, it would be a lake or it would be a sea, right? Not an ocean. An ocean is not completely surrounded by land. An ocean surrounds the land. But if the land surrounds the body of water, it's either, like I said, it could be a pond, a small lake, or it could be a sea, right? So in this case, we're looking at the Gulf of Mexico, which is a famous gulf. You have America up here. This is Texas, it goes along the southern states over here to Florida. And then, of course, we have Mexico coming down here, and the rest is Central America, but it's open. You can't see the rest of the map. It's open to the Atlantic Ocean. So the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean, there's no land between them. So it's not a sea, right? It's a gulf, okay? And of course, you can see over here, the Gulf of California is very similar, right? Because Baja California comes down here. This is Mexico, of course. And then Mexico, the rest of Mexico is over here. And you have some ocean that opens up into the Pacific Ocean. It's not completely surrounded. It's open to a larger body of water. So we call it a gulf, okay? So that's a gulf. Located. Now, in the previous lesson, we talked about locations, right? And of course, location is a noun. Located, where is it located? That describes where something exists or where it is, right? Not where it is being, but where it exists or where it is in a certain place, okay? So we use a sentence, where is it located? Where is the Gulf of Mexico located? Okay, south of America, east of Mexico. That is where it is located. So where is it located? Where is it? Okay, good. Next, peninsula. Now, peninsula is an interesting landform, right? There are many countries that are peninsulas. There are some states that are peninsulas. By the way, I always have a little hard time with the spelling of peninsula, and let me give you a little tip here. Sometimes I think, is it P-E-N-N? I want to put N-N or S-S. I was thinking, is it that way? No, just remember with peninsula, it's 1-1-1, okay? So if you get confused, you think, should I put two N's or two S's? No. It's 1-1-1, okay? Peninsula. One N, then one N, then one S. Not two N's together, right? They're separated. So peninsula. And pronunciation, peninsula. Peninsula, of course, it's like the opposite of a gulf. Okay? Think about it. It's an area of land that has water around three sides. Not completely surrounded, right? A gulf is not completely surrounded by land. A peninsula is not completely surrounded by water. It's connected to a larger body of land. Take, for example, the Korean peninsula, very famous peninsula, right? So you have a peninsula, but it's not completely surrounded. It's not the Korean island, right? No, it's not an island, it's a peninsula because it's connected to the rest of Asia, right? There you can walk. You don't have to cross any water to go from Korea to China to Russia, right? It's all land, right? But Korea is surrounded on three sides by water. That makes it a peninsula. The state of Florida in America, you look at a map of America, you see the state of Florida sticking down on the east coast, and that is another peninsula surrounded by the Atlantic Sea and the Gulf of Mexico on the west side and the Atlantic on the east side. And the Gulf of Mexico comes around the south as well. So those are peninsulas, okay? That's like the opposite of a gulf, okay? Trace. Trace means to follow something. And you probably know this word from art class, right? Sometimes if you have a picture, you say, oh, that's a cool picture. I want to draw it. So you put a piece of paper, thin paper, so you can see the image underneath. And what do? You draw the outline of, I don't know what I'm drawing here. Oh, there we go. Okay, I got it. You draw that's a horrible heart. I didn't know where I was going. Okay, so you just trace the object underneath the paper, and that's tracing. So to trace means to follow something. So you're following, the other hearts on the piece of paper. That's a little bit better. But anyway, this is also tracing. This guy here looks like a detective. He's tracing the footprints to find out who stole his cookie. Okay, so there's a cookie jar back here that's turned over, and there's lots of cookies on the floor, and one of them's eaten. Okay, so he's tracing to find out who ate my cookie. So he's tracing the footsteps. Okay, so to trace means to follow something. Okay, those are our words for the lesson.
Lesson 14. Various landforms. Landform. A shape on the surface of the earth. Stretch. To reach out. Mountain range. A series of mountains. Gulf. An area of water that is partly surrounded by land. Located. Being or existing in a certain place. Peninsula. An area of land that has water around its three sides. Trace. To follow something.
Okay, we always start with the vocabulary, and our first vocabulary word for this lesson is coal. Coal, of course, is like a black rock. It's not a very hard rock, right? You can break it up. It's not very strong rock, but it's a very important type of resource. And it is a kind of mineral that is black and hard, and it is burned for heat. That's the important point about coal. Many people use coal to create heat, whether it's in their homes or in their barbecues. Maybe you've been to a restaurant where they have a little metal pot and they put it in there and it has black pieces. What are those black pieces of, looks like rocks, and they burn. That's really weird, but you can put it in the table and you can put a grill over it and you can cook meat on top of it at a barbecue restaurant. But that's one very common use of coal. Of course, coal is used for many different reasons and has been used for over 100 years to help create heat. Okay, so that's coal. Replace. Replace is a verb. It is not a noun. To replace something means that you have something, maybe it's broken or you use it up, so you get a new thing and you replace it. So you use something else instead of something else. And this is a good example. If you, and I hope you don't do this, but sometimes glass can break. So you can't use it. So this is broken. So what do? You buy a new one to replace the one that you can't use anymore. Or if you have something, you use it all up, then you have to get something new to replace what you have used up. to replace, to use a new thing instead of an old thing or a thing that is gone, that is no longer. Okay. Environment. Environment is a very important word, isn't it? The environment is the area in which you live, and it includes the air, the water, and the land. So when we talk about the environment, we're usually talking about, three different things. We're talking about the air around us, we're talking about the land on which we live and we travel, and we're also talking about the water that flows through the land, that the water that we drink or that we use to grow plants. Of course, environment also includes the living things, the plants and animals that are around you. So all of these things make up part of the environment, the area or your surroundings. What is around you, that is your environment. Now, it doesn't matter if you live in a city. If you live in a city, your environment is an urban environment. It includes the buildings and the streets and the cars and the noise and all that other stuff. If you live in the countryside, your environment is more natural, right? You have grass, ground, dirt, fresh air, fresh water. These are different types of environments. Okay. Soil. Now, if your environment is in the countryside, you are familiar with soil. Soil is basically dirt, but soil is the top part of earth or ground. And when we talk about soil, we're usually talking about earth or dirt that is good for growing crops. As you can see in the picture, usually it's black, it's a little moist, and plants grow well in soil. In the desert, you don't really find soil. It's just sand or hard dirt. There's not much opportunity for plants to grow there because there's not a lot of soil. But if you go into a forested woodland, or if you go to some places of the world where there's a lot of crops, farmers grow a lot of crops, you will find soil. Okay, so soil is the top part of the earth or ground that is good for growing plants. Pollute. Unfortunately, this has become more common in the modern world. Pollute means to make something dirty or to add harmful material to it. So if you make something dirty, you've polluted it. But of course, if you go out and you play in the mud and you get mud and dirt on your shirt, don't say, I polluted my shirt. That's a little weird, right? It's more commonly used for when there's like large companies or a lot of harmful chemicals in the air, in the land, or in the water. Then we talk about pollution. Air pollution, this is a good picture of air pollution. If there are many cars and the gas coming out of the car is not good, it's not healthy for you to breathe, it's toxic chemicals, then you're polluting the air. Same thing, if there's a lot of harmful chemicals put into the water, then the water is polluted. Into the land, then the land is polluted. So to pollute means to add harmful things to something, like the environment, for example. Okay. Conservation. This has also become a very important word in our modern world. Conservation, conservation comes from a root word, to conserve. To conserve, that's a verb. To conserve means to save or to keep in the original condition. So conservation is the act or the actions of protecting something from harm or damage. So you want to protect something so that it is not damaged or it is not harmed. You conserve it. You keep it in its natural state. When we talk about the environment, we want to keep the environment in a natural state, not polluted, so that we can enjoy it. Then we're talking about conservation. Okay, but conservation can be applied to many different things, not just the environment. Just you're protecting something in its natural or original state. Okay. Last we have run out. It's a two-part verb. Run out. Verb plus preposition. Verb run, preposition out. Run out means that you've used all of something. To use all of something. So if you're cooking chocolate chip cookies for today, and you have a bunch of chocolate chips and you put all the chocolate chips into the cookie dough, you've run out of chocolate chips. If you want to make more chocolate chip cookies, you have to go to the store and buy some more chocolate chips, right? Okay, well, of course, that works for everything, right? And in this case, they're looking at gas, right? There's only so much gasoline in the world. Someday, in the future, we'll run out of gas. There won't be any more gas to use. So that's another example of running out of something. If you spend all your money, you ran out of money. So don't do that, okay? Save some of your money. But anyway, run out means to use all of something. It's all gone. I've run out of it. Okay, those are our words for today.
Lesson 15. Earth's resources. Coal. A kind of mineral that is black and hard and burned for heat. Replace. To be used instead of something else. Environment. The air, water, land, and living things around you. Soil. The top part of the earth or ground. Pollute. To make something dirty or add harmful materials to it. Conservation. Protecting something from harm or damage. Run out. To use all of something.